So, what's your story? It's a bold question to ask, one that gets past that normal icebreaker conversation about the weather, how the Packers won last night, or how the kids are doing. It's a question you don't ask someone unless you really want to get to know them better. So, what's your story? We all come here tonight with our own stories, right? Stories of love and heartbreak, stories of successes and stories of failures, stories of conquests and of defeats, adventures and boredom, joy and grief, stories we tell far too often and freely. Did I ever tell you the one about time, or that one time? And you want to say, yeah, 14 times already. Or stories we've told to no one because of shame or embarrassment or worry that they'll see you differently if they knew. So on this Christmas night, may we all start with this little truth. God already knows our stories, every last one of them, and every little detail, and completely unedited. And it's been that way since the very beginning of time. God knew the stories of his people Israel, just like he knows ours. He knew their moments of glory and their moments of defeat, their moments of faithfulness, and he knew of their infidelity. Like Santa, he knew when they were sleeping, he knew when they were awake, he knew whether they were bad or good. And yet, because of or despite the stories of our lives, he chose to be one with us in our human nature, to experience the same life stories as we do. And in that moment of incarnation, that moment that we celebrate tonight, everything changed, because in that moment, it was no longer about God knowing our story, but about God wanting to write his story on our hearts. Tonight, as on that very first night in Bethlehem, God asks us, are you willing? Will you allow me to write my story on your heart? The stories of our faith are sometimes complicated. Some of you come here tonight and your faith is secure and unwavering, strong and always has been, but others of us, well, we struggle with what we believe, or whether we believe at all. Life has a way of making us question some of those things that we were maybe once so sure of. And God says, I know. Now will you let me write my story of faithfulness on your heart? Stories of love are sometimes a complex blend of feelings and commitment and expectations. Love stories that fit neatly into a plan, and love stories that come out of nowhere. Love stories that are just, that still raise more questions than answers, and love stories that, well, just never happened. And God says to us, will you let me write my love story on your heart? Stories of our lives have been shaped by the kind of violence and darkness that no child or adult should ever have to experience. Stories of war and hatred, of prejudice and of poverty. And God pleads with us to allow him to overshadow those stories with his stories of compassion and healing and hope. Christmas is not and cannot to change our stories. It was never God's intention. God no longer wants to know our stories, good or bad, blessing or curse, to stand alone. He wants to be with us in those stories. He chooses to become with us so that he can walk alongside of us in our life. Christ is eager to make this earthly journey with us, eager to write his stories of hope, promise, grace, mercy, redemption, healing, compassion on our hearts. His story allows our stories of joy to be even more joyful, and to bring his light into stories of darkness. God is so eager to set this Christmas story that we remember tonight right alongside our ever-evolving stories, no matter how blessed or how messy they are. So the question that I believe Christmas sets before us tonight is this: is there still room in your heart for God's story to rest alongside your own? Are you willing to do that again, or maybe for the very first time? Are you willing to let God write his story on your heart?